Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Women's Wisdom. I'm in conversation today with Cassie Smith. Now, Cassie is a gorgeous lady that I've only known for a couple of years, but she feels like a lifelong friend. We met Cassie because we moved into her house, essentially. She was is a HelpX host. For those of you who have never heard of HelpX, it's similar to woofing, but just has a little bit more scope, I guess. So we came onto Cassie's property to help her and her family during harvest time, because it must have been about this time a couple of years ago, I think. And to discover that Cassie and I had lots of things in common, but Cassie was just way further down the track than me. It's pretty hard to homestead when you're in a caravan. So we were able to help Cassie and her husband Tony harvest or finish the harvest, do some preserving. And I just observed this amazing wealth of knowledge that Cassie has. She has one of those pantries that I would die for. You sort of walk in and there's just preserved jars of everything and anything, water, kefir, it's fabulous. So I thought I'd bring Cassie along because I remember she posted something not that long ago sort of saying, you know, not really needing to go out and buy so much in our current virus lockdown and hoarding purchase and all of those sorts of things, because she produces most of things herself. So I'm going to be chatting to Cassie about all of those sorts of things and seeing how perhaps there might be some things that you could be doing for yourself that are quite simple. You don't need a huge amount of background knowledge or equipment. So welcome, Cassie.
Oh, thanks, Pip. Good to see you. Good to be talking to everybody.
Yeah. So as I said, you're a homesteader. You've got all the secrets to lots of different things. I'm going to list a few of the things that I remember that you do yourself. So we've got soap and shampoo bars. You do many other bathroom products as well, if I remember, toothpaste and deodorant, your own cleaners. You produce your own apple cider vinegar, your own water kefir, produce many of your own fruits and vegetables on your property, and the excess of those, if they're not shared with HelpX or other guests that you're hosting at the time, tend to be preserved so that you can enjoy them throughout the year. I feel like I'm missing a whole heap of things. Do you want to add some things to that?
Oh, you've covered most of them, but yeah, it's mainly everything that we eat as well. So we make our own breads, things like that, yogurts. I have dabbled a little bit in feta cheese as well. So yeah, this time of year it's preserving, it's big time. So, you know, even just this morning I was getting rid of a backlog of tomatoes by making up some Mexican soup in bottles, which are going through the Fowler's unit as we speak. So yeah, just being creative and thinking about how we can use our food so that we have a year-long supply ready for the picking.
Which is, you know, is fabulous. And as I said, you know, you do tend to host quite a few guests throughout the year. So it's not just your family that you're feeding. And I know whenever we've dropped by or you've come to visit, we certainly feel quite stocked up with wonderful farm fresh produce. Oh, and your honey.
Oh, bees, can't forget the bees. We've had a very busy year this year after a couple of lean years.
Yep.
Our 7 hives have been producing well, so we seem to be spent the last few weeks finding every bottle or every container that hasn't got something in it has now got honey in it. So it's been magical.
Yeah, fabulous. Because I know there was a lot of concern after last year's fires down here in Tassie about how the bees might go and whether they'd have enough to collect. But it seems like your part of the world.
That's right. Yeah. Well, the bees did find it hard to make it through the winter. But we ended up supplementing their feed, and they came on nice and strong this year. We just had such a good extended season of things blossoming, and normally by now things would have finished, but I noticed yesterday when we were walking around the property that there was still lots of gums flowering. There's a new batch of clover which has just started flowering in the field. So yeah, we do have an abundance of bee food this year, which is lovely.
Fabulous, fabulous. Now, one of the amazing things that I discovered through you that you use your honey, well, one of the uses for your honey is your product called Holevici. Have I pronounced that correctly?
That's correct. You've hit it on the head. Yes, Holevici. It's actually been based on an old Chinese remedy, but and in that remedy they use sugar. So I've added the honey component and taken out the sugar, and it's a lovely soothing. It's normally something that I generally use in the winter, but I've taken to using it all year round now, and it's a lovely soothing. It cleanses first thing in the morning. So I just put a couple of tablespoons in a mug of recently boiled water, and it's the first drink I have in the day and the last drink I have in the day. So all through your throat area and things like that. So I know there's been lots of talk about ways of dealing with and preventing the infection of this COVID-19 that's happening right this minute. And some of those advices have been to sip hot drinks and to sip lemons and to sip apple cider vinegar and things like that. So Holevici takes on all those components all in the one. So I'm quite pleased that I've got something on the shelf ready to go, and most of the neighbourhood are now sipping away on their Holevici.
And so it's made up of honey, apple cider vinegar and lemons. Is there anything else?
Yes. Yeah, no, that's the lot. Then it's it's bottled, and then it does ferment for a couple of months, but it is equally as good to have straight. If you haven't got the luxury of time, then just sipping it from making it and bottling it is fine as well. So.
And do you have the recipe for that available on any of your sites that would be available to people?
No, I don't have it up, but it is, an easy thing to do. I just do 1 part apple cider vinegar, and that's a raw apple cider vinegar that hasn't been pasteurised or heat treated, to 1 part of raw honey. So again, not heat treated honey. So you've got all those beautiful antibodies and things that are produced in the raw honey. And then another equal part of sliced lemons. I suppose the key with the lemons is you wash them and let them air dry. So don't be afraid to get the brush out and scrub them. If you've picked them yourself and you've got a little bit of scale, mould or anything like that, you need to make sure that all that's removed and that they do have the time to air dry. So ideally overnight, wash them the night before, let them air dry overnight, then slice them up, pop them in your jar, and then put your apple cider vinegar and honey that you've mixed together, so that you've got, you might need to slightly warm your honey just to get that infusion with the apple cider vinegar, but not too much, because remember the heat does affect the properties of the honey.
Yeah, excellent. I've just written that down because I might pop that underneath this video, so that if anybody is interested in making it. But I noticed as well that for locals, you have some for sale. So for you locals down here in Tassie, just have a look at Cassie's website. I'll put the details of that up as well. And you can try some Holevici yourself. And I have to say, it's pretty damn good. I'm somebody who struggles to take apple cider vinegar. And I did balk when Cassie offered me some Holevici because of the apple cider vinegar, but the honey and the lemon in it, it actually makes it just such a soothing and refreshing warm drink. It's actually just a pleasure to drink. So that's kind of a bonus, actually. So often the good drinks are a bit, don't know that I really want to take it, but I will because it's doing me good. This one, you can get some pleasure from drinking it as well. So I'll pop that recipe up, and if people want to get a bit of the rundown, they can come back to the video and follow your instructions there. So, now, what are some of the other things that you feel have helped you prepare for our current situation, with a view to how other people might be able to take a few tips and feel a little more prepared than perhaps they currently do?
Yeah, well, for me, I mean, this past few weeks has seen a lot of mind confusion, not knowing up from down, what's coming. This isn't a normal situation that we've had throughout our lives. So I suppose I'm yearning for normality. I'm yearning for a mind that's a little bit clearer than what it is. So in the past, when there's been situations that have caused anxiety and that, whether it be with me or with family members or whatever, I've always been drawn to nurturing and nourishing. And my background being in hospitality, I head to the kitchen and cook up something. So, and there is a bit of science behind that too. So, wanting to be nourished, wanting to feel healthy comes from the food that we eat. So, if we can provide good, wholesome foods, then we can sort of stabilise our mental well-being as well. So, in times of anxiety, you know, you tend to head for the wine, the caffeine, the bag of lollies, those sorts of things. And it's probably the absolute worst things that we could do, because it will heighten the anxiety feeling within our body. So if we can nurture our body with good, wholesome food, then that goes a long way to just settling down the feelings and getting some normality in the mind. You know, other measures, and I'm hearing it a lot, is just drip feed the media content that you're taking in. If you sit in front of the TV or in front of your Facebook feed for an hour or two at a time, your state of mind changes. Or if you're starting the day with some news feed like that, then it seems to set the tone for the day.
Yeah.
So it's quite a discipline, really. I mean, I've got out of the habit probably 3 or 4 years ago now of not turning the telly on in the morning, putting some music on. Sometimes I'll have the local radio station on, but not starting my day with that overload of information. And there certainly is an overload of stuff going on out there, analysing every situation and where we're heading and whatnot. So just stepping back from that.
Not to mention so much of it's conflicting. So it's kind of, you end up sitting there going, don't know what to believe, and you feel horrible because you're confused and because the news hasn't been good. So yeah, I was just going to mention too, when you talked about your food and the, you know, nourishing yourself with good food, immediately brought the phrase to mind, comfort food. Now, when a lot of people think of comfort food, they're thinking of puddings and stodge and those things that you kind of can sink yourself into. But if we split the perspective and just go, comfort food are the things that nurture and nourish you so that you can feel well, and that brings you comfort. So it's actually, I guess, redefining comfort food, that it's that cooked, nourished, fresh, you know, nutrient dense food. So the thing that's actually going to serve you and your body well actually serves your state of mind well at the same time.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, that's one of our main driving forces for being homesteaders and growing and being self-sufficient, is knowing what's in our food. So we know that we don't spray. We know that there's no chemical component being laced into our foods. And we've been able to control the amount of nutrition that's within our foods too. So we're not growing for the fastest, most perfect round tomato. We're growing the old heritage varieties that taste like tomatoes, that are packed with nutrients because we know that our soil health is good, and those sorts of things. So then once we do get to the kitchen, it's just, you then go for those nurturing recipes, you know, your cauliflower cheese and your potato bakes and things like that. Whilst they might be high fat contents and whatever, you are getting good nutritional value. And if you're balancing that out with some other vegetables, and if you eat meat or fish, then you know you've got your protein component as well. So and even, you know, talking desserts, we don't miss out on desserts by any stretch of the imagination. Like this time of year, we've got beautiful peaches that are ripening up. So a peach crumble or a peach pie goes down a treat. You can top that with a nice dollop of yogurt or something like that. That's another thing that we make is our own yogurt. So, and then you can use those fruits that you've stewed or made into compots or coolies to flavour your yogurts throughout the year. So, you know, you can continue that joy of the beautiful ripe raspberries and blackberries that we've had all summer. We can enjoy those flavours all year round.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And having been a guest at your dinner and lunch table, I know what gets produced from that garden. It's fabulous. The other upside too of the self-sufficiency through food is the outdoor and exercise. You know, it's a physical thing to produce your own food, and you're actually being outside, and you know that we all know that's good for your well-being anyway. Just getting the vitamin D and the fresh air, but getting your hands in the soil and physically working.
That's right, and I think we'll probably see an increase. I know that Tasmanians generally have a deficiency of vitamin D, so that might be one positive that comes out of this with everybody heading to the gardens. I know that when you guys were staying, we were harvesting potatoes, and we're about to attack our second plot, which are the potatoes for the later end of the season. They'll keep us going right through until summer. So looking forward to getting out there. Unfortunately, it's a rainy day today, so it'll have to be put on the list for later in the week. But, yeah, all those things are a joy to be able to harvest and just getting out there. I mean, I'm probably fairly unconventional in my method for harvesting potatoes, and I know Tony likes to get in and have a good dig with the fork, but I'm usually on my hands and knees, rabbiting around, digging with my hands so that there's no forks go through the potatoes. So
yes, well, that's a problem, isn't it? Once the fork goes through,
that's right. There's only so many potatoes you can eat in the first week.
Yeah, that's right. And there was quite a mound. I remember when we harvested, there was quite a mound of potatoes. So, but as you say, that lasts you a year. That's sort of something
that's
that
right,
you through the year. So
that's
how long has it taken you to get your garden to the point where you feel fairly confident that you're planting and producing enough to keep you?
It was probably about the second or third year. We've been here for nearly 10 years now, and a lot of it comes down to maths equations. You know, I suppose people don't look at maths as being part of gardening, but I'm always analysing things and perfecting things and that sort of thing. So, but quite a lot of it is just simple calculation. Okay, how many times a week do I feed my family potatoes? We're at this stage an average family of 4. Let's say we eat potatoes two times a week. So that's 4 kilos of potatoes a week. Times 50 is 200 kilos. So then you need to sort of work out your yields from that. If I plant 1 potato in my mound, then I might expect 2 kilos of potatoes from that mound. And so then you just work out your quantities from there. We also like to plant 2 varieties, an early and a late, just so that we get the whole year covered with potatoes. Otherwise, we find with our Dutch creams, they're starting to seed around August, around spring. So that's when we plant them, and so they're no longer really very viable to eat. They get a bit soft and squishy. They are fine, but they are getting to the end of their life. So that would mean we would have 3 to 4 months with no potatoes. So by planting a second crop of brownells, which are a late season potato, they're a lot firmer and harder, and they won't start sprouting until around closer to December. So then we plant them in December, and we're about to harvest them now. So it means that we get that whole year. We have a variety of potatoes that we can be utilising, and that's just keeping them in paper bags in the garage in a nice, cool, dark environment. So we haven't had to buy potatoes in about 10 years.
Fabulous. And they're good potatoes too. Good potatoes.
Yeah.
Now, I did have a question, and it's gone straight out of my mind, something you said. Anyway, we'll come up with we'll come up with it again if it's important for me to pass that on. The next question I had was about your skincare, hair care, home care products. So what sort of things do you use for cleaning? I'm assuming
So
then.
as you mentioned earlier that I do make my own apple cider vinegar. That is a main ingredient in a lot of things. I also buy just your regular white vinegar as well. That's a good staple because apple cider vinegar does have a little bit of the tannins in the product. So depending on what you're using it for, if you're using it in a rinse in your washing machine, you can actually end up adding a little bit of stain to particularly white clothes and things. So you need to choose the right style of vinegar for the application. Vinegar for me is a great all-round product. We produce about 50 litres a year just for our household, notwithstanding what I make for Holevici, that's another equation. But and that can be for things like hair tonics, as you said, in the bathroom. So it's just a case of I've got I think it's about a 500 ml bottle with some plastic bottle with some straight apple cider vinegar in it. And then I've got a little squirty bottle that I just put a little bit in each day because I don't like the coldness that it brings if you're just squirting it on your scalp. So I just mix 1 part apple cider vinegar to 2 or 3 parts warm water, and then that's just the final rinse of the hair, and it stays on. So you then got this environment on your scalp or your skin or between your toes or wherever you like to be using it that creates an environment that funguses and viruses and things like that don't like to live. So if you're creating an environment that's not welcoming to them, then you deter a lot of those things. So for me, many years ago I had issues where I lost lots of my hair. I had alopecia and then I had other issues where I couldn't use any products whatsoever. And so that's really why we started making our own shampoo bars, because after trying every product under the sun for about 3 years running, I came up with goat's milk soap. And so like everything, I can probably make that myself. And it's taken us quite a few years to get the formula down pat. But we have got this lovely shampoo bar that's very soothing. I haven't had any hair loss issues. I haven't had any blistering on the scalp and things like that. So coupled with the apple cider vinegar as a tonic has been the saving grace for me. And that's all that sits in our shower recess. Is a bar of the shampoo bar, which we actually use for our body as well, and the apple cider vinegar. So there's no grazing the aisles of the pharmacy looking for different products anymore. It's just those two.
Fabulous. Yeah, I think it was you that put me on to shampoo bar and apple cider vinegar. So that's what I've been using for the last couple of years. And yeah, I don't want to go back. It's much nicer.
It's easy.
It is easy. And I have to say, for travellers, being able to just take a bar of soap is so much easier when you've got all the restrictions with, the size of the bottles you can take and all of that sort of thing. If you've just got a bar of soap, just take it with you. It just makes life so much easier. So it's
and one of the upsides too is the condition of the cleanliness of the shower recess too. So with all the other products, you tend to get this sort of slimy film on the glass and in corners, things like that. But by using the vinegar as part of your regime, you're also creating a mold-free environment in the shower recess, and it means that there's less cleaning to do, which is always a bonus, because there's never anyone else lining up to clean the recess.
Funny that, isn't it? I know what it was I was going to ask you before when you were talking about the maths. for working out the maths when you're producing food. Sorry, I'm jumping around a bit here, but that just came back into my mind.
Right.
I just needed to point out that you're another mum who has home educated her children. I've sort of had a little chuckle to myself as I've looked at the list of women that I've invited to come on these conversations, and I think more than 2/3 home educating women. So this is something that a lot of mums are experiencing for the first time in many places at the moment, and having a bit of a meltdown and feeling a little stressed about how that might all work and things. So that popped when you were talking about that. I sort of wondered whether you ever got the girls to help work out the maths on your garden plot.
That's right. Yeah, we were always very much project-based in our approach for homeschooling, and so we had many a project whereby we were designing the garden bed, or we decided to put a hothouse in. So that became was almost a term-long project whereby we designed it, drew it to scale, determined the distance, which posts were going to be cemented in, which ones were just going to be rammed in, what materials we needed, how far away from the couch the beds needed to be, so I could sit there and pick strawberries without having to extend too much, things like that. So that was a wonderful project that we had with the girls, and it's still standing today. It's just had its 6th season, and it really does add a lot of benefit to our cold Tassie season, and it's extended our growing season by about 3 months, which is wonderful.
But isn't that the wonderful thing about home education, is that, you can do those sorts of things and they're very practical, very hands-on, but the elements that are in that, I mean, how many different key learning areas are covered by, planning, designing,
That's right,
building,
yes.
executing, and then actually going into the harvest aspect as well. So there's just so many different areas. So again, that's sort of the thing that crosses my mind when people start to feel a bit anxious or certain that they could never homeschool their child because they're not smart enough or they couldn't introduce things. That there's so many examples in our everyday life where you can, if you just bring awareness to what you're doing, they're covering so many different things, and they come out the other end of it with a really useful lifelong skill and a practical application for so many of the things that tend to be a bit theorised in a classroom.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
I often reflect on my schooling, and particularly maths. I was never that good or enthused about maths. And I always remember every year when I had a different maths teacher, and, I'd always sort of throw the question in, how is this relevant, or when am I going to use this? And so that always stuck in the back of my mind when we were doing things with the girls, and even my son before them, was the relevance. And so if you could have a project-based thing like building a hothouse or whatever, it just became part of the process. So yes, there was a maths lesson in that, and there was a science, and there was graphic design, and there was drawing, and there was lots of different things in that. The kids didn't necessarily see that as a maths lesson.
Yeah.
So it was just, we needed to calculate this, we needed to measure this, we needed to count this, we needed to decide on the design. So it all just happened, and those sorts of things stick in their mind more so than a repetitious list of equations in a maths book. So they know how to go about it straight away because it's a practical application.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find it's the same thing with cooking too. When you preserving, you've got to do X, Y, Z, Y, because if you don't, you're going to end up with mold or cross-contamination with something, and you've got to have the proportions right and the temperature right and all the different bits and pieces. It's all sort of, the maths and science in it can actually be really quite complex, but the application is pretty simple, and you just remember that that's what you need to do and why perhaps you need to do it. So it makes it a much easier concept. So there's a tip for you mums out there, mums and dads out there confronting homeschooling for the first time. Just be with your kids, do stuff, they'll learn.
Mm.
It's as simple as that.
That's
So,
right, exactly.
yeah. So if there was something that you could suggest to our listeners out there that they might be able to just introduce, one thing that you offer, what would you suggest? I mean, it could be anything. It might be healthy. It might be making wax wraps. It might be, you know, planting herbs, whatever.
Yeah. I suppose it's really difficult to say one thing, but anyway, if you are thinking of planting things for the first time, or you've just cleared a space out, do a little bit of homework with the kids, do some research as to what things are growing in your region at the moment. So every region is different, whether you're coastal, whether you're inland, whether you're northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. Even around Australia, we've got lots of different growing environments. So have a look at those environments, see what you can plant now, do the maths calculation. Do I really want to eat 240 cauliflowers in 3 months' time?
Yeah.
And yeah, so don't, I know that there's been a lot of talk in the media about there's no seeds available, there's no seedlings available, you know, and I sort of wonder if people have gone out and bought, you know, 24 zucchini plants and that all in one shop. So just work out what you need and plant what you think you'll need. A good rule of thumb for me is add 20% more. Yeah. Because some will fail, and I always let a couple of everything go to seed, so I've got the rotation ready for the next year. So just have a little bit of think about your plan before you just madly go popping everything you can find in the ground, and make sure that at the end of the season, when it is time to harvest, that you have got the products there that you want for that season, and a method of harvesting. We have a lovely sharing, caring community, and quite often, you know, there'll be excess produce that you can take advantage of. My excess produce is after I've bottled, after I've preserved, after I've frozen, after I've dehydrated. Then if there's still excess, then it sort of goes further afield. But there's many different ways of preserving and having that produce available to the rest of the family for the whole year. So just think about how you can make it last, be creative. One of my go-to books here in Tassie, particularly, and she's a lovely lady in the south of Tasmania, Sally Wise. She has lots of different ways of preserving and making some gorgeous chutneys and relishes and things like that. So that's another great resource to have a look at as well. And I love reading recipe books. I know I can Google lots of things, but I love reading recipe books and seeing how it was done back in the 50s by the, you know, Mersey Valley guides or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's some wonderful, you know, those lovely, nourishing, old school recipes out there that, you know, will give you that lovely, nurtured feeling in times like this. So I suppose for me, getting in the kitchen or getting in the garden brings some normality back to my life in these times where we're just so confused. So it's almost, what's the word? Tranquilizing, I suppose, when you get into the garden, or meditative, and you can get your hands in the soil and just get back to basics of, you know, in touch with Mother Earth, see what she's producing. You know, if you live out in the country or you're close to countryside lanes and things, we can be picking blackberries and things like that this time of year. If you see apples on the side of the tree, on the side of the road, you know, they're there for the picking. you know, take advantage of those beautiful things that are in abundance at the moment, that Mother Nature's just put us there ready for. Hey, look at me.
Yeah.
I found an apple tree on the farm yesterday that hadn't produced apples for the last few years, but it's in a full bloom. No, excuse me. It's been in full bloom, and now it's produced some wonderful apples. So I'll be heading down there
Fabulous.
later on in the week to sample some more.
Yeah, and that's one of the lovely things in Tasmania is it's probably the place I've seen the most foraging of foods that we would recognise. I know there's lots of foraging sort of elsewhere, but you tend to need to know a little bit more about what you're looking at and what you're picking. But apples and blackberries and lots of different things available for the picking down here. So that's certainly something we take advantage of. So, well, Cassie, our time is nearly up. So for our listeners out there, if you'd like to get more of Cassie's wisdom, she's got a fabulous website with a beautiful little video of her in her garden, so you can see what her life looks like, just a little window into it. And Cassie does wonderful workshops face-to-face. Unfortunately, again, due to COVID-19, they have had to be postponed, but she's working, I believe, on some online versions. So if you'd like to know more about those and get some real hands-on tips, I guess, as to how to bring a little bit more homesteading into your lifestyle, I'm sure Cassie will be popping those up either on her Facebook or her website or both. So I'll pop those underneath the video so that you can access those as well. So thanks for your time, Cassie. It's always just a pleasure having a chat and a cup of tea with you. So, and hopefully once all things are settled down, we'll have a catch up face to face, and we can share some more tips.
Yes. When we're allowed to move around again, that'll be good.
Indeed, indeed. Well, in the meantime, enjoy the harvest.
Yes, I will.
We'll catch up with you again soon. So thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. See you later, Pip.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.